When we consider crimes committed by the Nazi regime, the list of evil that comes to mind is typically a male. We often forget that behind the machismo attitude of the regime, there were also several Nazi women. It is estimated that approximately 500,000 women either witnessed or directly contributed to the regime's atrocities in one way or another. Nazi concentration camps worked similarly to prisons at that time, where men would watch over the men and women would watch over the women. Horrible atrocities were committed on a daily basis, and today we are going to be talking about Irma Gries, also known as the hyena of Auschwitz. But before we get into today's video, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button along with the notification bell to make sure that you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. Irma Gries was born in Rechen, Germany on October 7, 1923. She was one of 5 children of a dairy farmer. Her mother was very unhappy in her marriage to Irma's father and was committed to make her escape through suicide by drinking hydrochloric acid after finding out that her husband had an affair with the local pub owner's daughter. Irma was only 13 when this happened and was often bullied by her classmates. This was because not only had her mother committed suicide, but she was also known as the poor dairy farmer's daughter. Irma lacked the courage to stand up for herself and continued to get bullied so badly that she dropped out of school as a very young teen. While I can joke about her being bullied and turning into a bully, this was only the start for young Irma. While not confirmed, it is very likely that she was bullied most by the more popular and attractive girls in her school years, but we will get back to that later. Looks like Irma is already off to a great start. Many women chosen as guards did not have prior experience in that particular field. This was also the case for Irma, as she previously worked as retail or in an office. At the young age of 19, she got the job as an SS guard and moved her way up in the ranks to SS Senior Supervisor. The SS Senior Supervisor was the second rank among all of the females in the SS, and it was considered to be a very reputable and prestigious position. Within 2 years, she was named the Hyena of Auschwitz. How did she get this name? According to Dr. Gisela Perl, a female inmate doctor in Auschwitz-Birkenau, Irma was one of the most beautiful women she had ever seen. Her body was perfect in every single way, her face was clear and angelic, and her beautiful blue eyes were astonishing, the most innocent eyes one could possibly imagine. And yet Irma Gries was the most depraved, cruel, imaginative pervert that she had ever come across. Gries was known to laugh like a hyena as she beat inmates to death. Irma was in charge of the selection process for Jewish inmates to be selected for the gas chamber right after the train. Irma would not only choose the elderly, children, and sickly, but she would also go out of her way to ensure that anyone that could be considered beautiful or pretty would be put in the chambers immediately as well. Gries used her whip and pistol to punish inmates for the smallest infractions of the concentration camp rules, and she was always using her whip on well-endowed women. She would use it across the breasts with her whip. Many women would develop infections in their breasts from these injuries caused by the braided wire that was part of her whip. Gries would order doctors to use knives that were not sterilized and not to use anesthesia during these operations, leaving women screaming in absolute agony. Irma would often watch these women suffering in agony, and she would enjoy the sight of this suffering. One witness remembered seeing Irma with her tense body swinging back and forth in a revealing rhythmic motion. Her cheeks were flushed, and her wide open eyes had this rigid staring look of complete sexual gratification. She did this on multiple occasions and came to watch the operations of the women whose breasts that had been slashed open and become infected with lice and dirt, which took over the women's camp. Irma would also kick the victims of these operations if their screams interfered with her sexual pleasure, and giving herself completely to the orgasm, which shook her entire body and made saliva run down from the corner of her mouth. Ew. Grease also had 1 or 2 huge dogs as part of her reign over the camp. Grease would ride around on a bicycle with a dog at her side, making inmates run on foot on a 16-kilometer trek. If they couldn't keep up, Grease would have the dog attack them and maul them until they were dead. Grease would roam the women's camps at Ravensbrück, Auschwitz, and Bergen-Belsen looking for female victims that she could abuse. Irma originally attempted to become a nurse, which is where she was first introduced to sadism, but she became known as a sexual deviant during her career. After her officer's training, she continually had intimate relations with male SS officers at Ravensbrück, and she was known to have a primitive promiscuity about her. Moving along to when Grease was in command of over 30,000 female prisoners in Birkenau, she became notorious for wearing heavy boots, a whip, and a pistol, and every survivor account refers to these 3 sadistic objects Grease became infamous for owning and using. She is also remembered for her physical beauty. On occasion, she was called the Beautiful Beast, or the Blonde Angel of Hell. She was fond of many rare and expensive perfumes, which she would wear in order to torment the prisoners under her command, who lived in filth and were in a state of physical and mental degradation. They dreamed of everything that Irma wore and she had. Irma Grease was reputed to be a sexual deviant, and she took lovers from the male and female populace of Birkenau. She had numerous love affairs with several female inmates, but she would unfortunately grow tired or bored with them, and she would send them off to their death. Grease would often beat her sexual subjects, and she had been seen dragging a naked woman around by the hair and whipping her to death. If Grease were ever rejected by an inmate, she would torture them by killing their loved ones. Not them, their loved ones. She also at one point had become pregnant, but abortions were illegal at that time, so she used the concentration camp doctor and forced the doctor to perform an abortion on her by gunpoint. Now that's classy. Grease also made inmates hold very large rocks over their heads during roll call, and if they weren't able to hold the rocks up, she would beat them to death. She would also force people to kneel for long periods of time, run several miles, or be mauled by her dogs. She raped inmates. She would purposefully set up traps for an excuse to beat people. For instance, she would leave out some potato peels on a table, waiting for a starving prisoner to try and eat them, and then she would beat them, sometimes to death. At the end of the war, Irma Grease was captured by the British to take part in her trial. She pleaded not guilty and she lost. She appealed her case as many times as she was legally able to, but ultimately she was hanged for her war crimes. The British ended her life on December 13, 1945. She was only 22 years old and was the youngest female to die judicially under British law in the 20th century. Although 16 female wardens were also charged with crimes as bad as hers, she was one of only 3 female guards to be sentenced to death. Grease remained defiant after the verdicts were read, and when the white hood was being placed over her head for her hanging, her last word was schnell, which means quickly. The body crashed down, and the body was taken down after 20 minutes after she was confirmed dead and placed in a coffin for burial. If you enjoyed this video and like strange, dark, paranormal, and mysterious stuff, that is all we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of our future videos. Until then, please know that your support is really appreciated. Until next time, have a great day.